5 men. That's all it took. 5 men who became a wall, a fortress, a brotherhood forged in blood, sweat, and something darker than most people will ever understand. In 1976, they didn't just block defenders, they destroyed them. They humiliated them. They made grown men question why they ever chose football. Running backs ran through holes so wide you could drive a truck through them. Quarterbacks stood in the pocket like they were having a picnic. Zero pressure, zero fear, all day to throw. And the defenders on the other side, they learned what fear really meant. But here's the thing nobody ever talks about. What happens when the final whistle blows for the last time? What happens when the cheering stops? When the stadium lights go dark? When the bodies that built an empire start to crumble and break down? This is the story of the greatest offensive line in Raiders history. Maybe the greatest offensive line in NFL history. How 5 men became unstoppable. How they conquered the football world. And what the game they loved took from them in return. Stay with me, because this story will change how you see football forever. Before we talk about their greatness, you need to understand something important about the Oakland Raiders. They weren't like other teams, not even close. The Raiders didn't want polished college superstars. They didn't want guys with perfect resumes and clean backgrounds. They wanted the misfits, the cast-offs, the rejects, the troublemakers, the guys every other team gave up on, the ones labeled too difficult, too angry, too damaged. Al Davis built his entire empire on one beautiful belief. Everyone deserves a second chance. And if you wore the silver and black, you played with a chip on your shoulder the size of the entire state of California. By 1976, this team had been close to glory so many times it was almost cruel. Heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. They lost the 1968 Super Bowl. They watched the confetti fall for someone else. They lost the 1973 AFC Championship in the most agonizing way you could possibly imagine, the Immaculate Reception, a play that still haunts Raiders fans to this very day. Year after year, they came so close. Year after year, something went wrong. They were tired of being called the team that almost made it, tired of being the bridesmaids, tired of watching other teams celebrate while they went home empty. Head coach John Madden understood something fundamental about football. Championships aren't won through the air. They're not won with trick plays or fancy schemes. They're won in the trenches, in the mud, in the blood, in the places where cameras don't like to look. And he had 5 men ready to prove it to the entire world. Let's start on the left side of that offensive line, the blind side, the most dangerous piece of real estate in professional football, where quarterbacks can't see what's coming, where careers end in a single violent moment. 2 men protected this sacred ground, and they were absolutely terrifying. Art Shell, left tackle, 6'5", 280 pounds of pure, controlled violence. But those numbers don't even begin to tell the real story. Art Shell didn't just play offensive line. He completely redefined what the position could be. When you watch him on film, something becomes immediately clear. His feet never stop moving, ever. His hands strike with the precision and power of industrial pistons. His eyes see everything before it happens. Defensive ends came into games thinking they were quick. Shell was quicker. They thought they were strong. Shell was stronger. They thought they knew moves. Shell had already forgotten more moves than they would ever learn. He had this technique that was almost supernatural, this way of getting his hands under your pads before your brain even registered what was happening. One moment, you're rushing toward the quarterback with violence in your heart. Next moment, you're on your back, staring at the sky, wondering what truck just hit you. 8 Pro Bowls, first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to ever play the position. But in 1976, he was just getting warmed up. And right next to him, shoulder to shoulder, brother in arms, Gene Upshaw, left guard. 6'5", 255 pounds of explosive athleticism. If Art Shell was the immovable anchor, then Gene Upshaw was the nuclear-powered engine. This man could move in ways that seemed impossible for someone his size. Watch him on pulling plays. Watch him on screen passes. Watch him lead a sweep around the corner. He comes at you like a freight train that somehow learned to change directions at full speed. Fast for his size, nasty in his approach, absolutely relentless in his pursuit of contact. Upshaw didn't just want to block you. He wanted to put you in the dirt. He wanted to stand over you. He wanted you to remember his number for the rest of your life. 63. That number lived rent-free in the nightmares of every defender who faced him. Together, Shell and Upshaw formed the greatest left side in the entire history of professional football.
Period. Full stop. No debate. When they worked in tandem, when they communicated with just a glance, it was like watching art come to life. Violent, beautiful, terrifying art, but art nonetheless. Now let's talk about the heartbeat of this unit, the center. Dave Dalby, 6'3", 250 pounds. He wasn't the biggest center in the league. He wasn't the fastest. He definitely wasn't the loudest. But here's what you absolutely need to understand about Dave Dalby. He was the smartest player on that football field, any given Sunday. Every great offensive line needs a brain, a general, someone who sees the blitz forming before the defense even knows they're blitzing, someone who adjusts protection in the time it takes you to blink, someone who makes everyone around him better just by being there. That was Dave Dalby. Every single snap, every single game, every single season. He called out assignments with absolute certainty, changed blocking schemes in a heartbeat, identified threats that nobody else could see. All of this in the 2 seconds before the ball was snapped. And he did it while delivering perfect snaps, consistent, reliable, mechanical. His teammates used to say something about him that stuck with me. They said playing with Dave Dalby was like having an extra coach on the field, someone who always knew the answer, someone who never panicked. He made their jobs easier. He took pressure off their shoulders. And when things got ugly, when defenses brought chaos and confusion, when everyone else felt the heat, Dalby stayed calm, ice cold, frozen lake in January, every single time. That 1976 season, he didn't miss a single snap. Not one. Not for injury, not for rest, not for anything. That's what true consistency looks like. That's what leadership looks like. Quiet, steady, unbreakable. Now let's talk about the right side of this line. The forgotten side. The side that doesn't get the glory, doesn't make the highlight reels, doesn't get the magazine covers. But without it, everything crumbles. Everything falls apart. George Bueller, right guard, 6'2", 270 pounds, built like a refrigerator that learned to move. Compact, powerful, devastating. Bueller wasn't flashy. He didn't want interviews. He didn't want attention. He didn't want his name in the papers. He just wanted to move people. And move people he did. On running plays, he created lanes that running backs could navigate with their eyes closed. Clean, wide, inviting. On passing plays, he absorbed rushes like a human sponge, took the impact, redirected the force, kept his quarterback clean. No panic in his game, no wasted motion, no ego. Just pure, beautiful, fundamental football. His teammates had a nickname for him, the Silent Enforcer, because he never talked, never trash-talked, never celebrated. He just worked. Every practice like it was the Super Bowl, every game like it was his last, every snap like his life depended on it. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle, John Vella, right tackle, 6'4", 265 pounds, the youngest member of this legendary group. But don't let his age fool you for a single second. John Vella played with the intensity and intelligence of a grizzled veteran. He came to Oakland in 1972, a young kid with potential but so much to learn. So he learned. He watched Art Shell, studied his technique, absorbed every detail. He watched Gene Upshaw, learned that nastiness, that edge. He watched Dave Dalby, understood the mental game. By 1976, John Vella was a complete football player, smart enough to handle any stunt, any twist, any game the defense tried to play. Strong enough to anchor against power rushers who outweighed him. Athletic enough to reach the second level and destroy linebackers. Vela was the final piece, and with him, the puzzle was complete. Now here's where this story gets really interesting. 5 great players don't automatically make a great unit. We've seen it happen 100 times in sports history. All-star teams that fail, supergroups that crumble. Talent without chemistry equals disaster. So what made these 5 different? What turned them from 5 individuals into one unstoppable machine? One word: trust. These men didn't just play together. They lived together in a way that modern players would never understand. They practiced together, they ate together, they bled together, they celebrated together, they mourned together. They knew each other's tendencies like they knew their own heartbeats. Shell knew exactly where Upshaw would be on every play before it happened. Dalby knew the exact moment when Bueller needed help. Vela knew precisely when to pass off rushes to someone else. It was telepathic, almost supernatural. Watch them on film if you ever get the chance. Watch how they move as one organism. No hesitation, no confusion, no miscommunication. 5 bodies moving with one mind. And there was something else, something darker, something that other teams didn't have. These men had rage, controlled rage, directed rage, productive rage. The Raiders were the villains of the NFL. Every team hated them, every fan base booed them, every media outlet questioned them, and they absolutely loved it. That hate, that disrespect, those doubts, it fueled them like gasoline on fire. They fed on it, they consumed it, they transformed it into energy. By 1976, they weren't just a football team. They were an army, a family, a force of nature. January 9th, 1977.
Rose Bowl Stadium, Pasadena, California. Super Bowl 11. The Oakland Raiders versus the Minnesota Vikings. This was the moment of truth. Minnesota had a legendary defense, the Purple People Eaters, a defensive line that had terrorized quarterbacks for years. They'd been to 3 Super Bowls already. They knew playoff pressure. They knew how to rattle offenses. They thought they could intimidate Oakland. They thought they could get to Ken Stabler. They were dead wrong. From the very first snap of that game, the Raiders' offensive line took absolute control. It wasn't competitive, it wasn't close, it wasn't even fair. The Vikings couldn't generate pressure, couldn't penetrate the pocket, couldn't even breathe near the quarterback. Running backs Clarence Davis and Mark Van Egan ran wild, gashing the Minnesota defense over and over again. 266 rushing yards in a Super Bowl. That number is almost impossible to comprehend. Ken Stabler stood in a pocket that was completely clean. No hurries, no hits, all day to survey the field and deliver strikes. The offensive line was flawless that day. Absolutely, completely flawless. Final score, Raiders 32, Vikings 14. But that score doesn't tell the real story. This wasn't a game. This was a statement. The Oakland Raiders were finally champions. And those 5 men, Shell, Upshaw, Dalby, Bueller, Vela, they didn't just win a ring. They proved something to the entire football world. Great teams are built from the inside out, from the trenches outward. But now comes the part of the story that breaks my heart. The championships fade, the confetti gets swept away, the cheering stops. Real life begins. And for these 5 warriors, real life brought triumph and tragedy in equal measure. Art Shell went on to become a true legend. In 1989, the Raiders named him head coach. Stop and think about what that means. The first African-American head coach in modern NFL history. Art Shell didn't just break barriers, he shattered them. He showed the world that excellence knows no color. Hall of Fame inducted in 1989, a legacy that will last forever. Gene Upshaw hung up his cleats in 1981 after 15 incredible seasons. But he wasn't done fighting, not even close. He became executive director of the NFL Players Association. For over 2 decades, he battled for player rights, better contracts, better health care, better pensions, better treatment. He gave voice to players who had no voice. Hall of Fame in 1987. Warrior on and off the field. But in 2008, tragedy struck with cruel swiftness. Pancreatic cancer. 3 days. That's all it took. Gene Upshaw was gone at 63 years old. A fighter until his very last breath. Dave Dalby stayed with the Raiders until 1985. 14 seasons. 1 team, 1 jersey, 1 loyalty. But life after football was brutal to him. The body that gave so much began to fail. The pain that accumulated over 14 seasons never went away. In 2002, Dave Dalby passed away. He was 50 years old. 50. A champion, a warrior, a brother. Gone far too soon. George Bueller walked away the same way he played, quietly, without fanfare or drama. He disappeared from the spotlight, lived his life on his own terms, never asked for recognition. The silent enforcer until the very end. John Vella retired in 1979, a shorter career than the others, but those years meant everything to him. He carries that Super Bowl ring with him always, carries those memories in his heart, carries the brotherhood in his soul. Football takes from every player who dares to play it, but offensive linemen pay the highest price. Every single snap is a car crash. Every practice accumulates damage. Knees give out, backs break down, necks stiffen, brains suffer. These men knew the cost when they signed up. They accepted it. They paid it willingly. But knowing the cost doesn't make the payment any easier. The 1976 Raiders offensive line taught us something profound about football and about life. Greatness isn't individual, it's collective. 5 men, different backgrounds, different personalities, different journeys, but one mission, one purpose, one unbreakable brotherhood. Shell, Upshaw, Dalby, Bueller, Vella. They weren't just teammates, they were family. And their legacy lives on forever. In every Raiders fan who remembers, in every offensive lineman who studies their film, in every young player who learns what true sacrifice means. Unstoppable, unbreakable, unforgettable.